Buenos días, le doy la bienvenida a los héroes que pudieron transitar por el centro y microcentro de la ciudad en un día de particular, me parece, movimiento de autos, al menos es lo que nosotros experimentamos. Entonces retomamos hoy el fil rouge, el discurso del encuentro, allá donde lo dejamos ayer. Ayer nosotros empezamos viendo en la intervención de Eric algunas ilustraciones y yo diría más bien iluminaciones de las causas posibles del desarrollo, así como de las causas posibles del subdesarrollo. Y lo que nos brindó Eric no era solamente una visión personal, sino una visión personal fundada sobre un copioso grupo de textos literarios y económicos de los tiempos antiguos. Y por supuesto que fue muy grato a mi oído escuchar muchos nombres conocidos de filósofos renacentistas italianos. Lo que seguimos con Joseph Love fue más bien una focalización sobre algunos puntos de vista de la clase que se queda afuera un poco, digamos así, de lo que son los relatos clásicos de los economistas sobre el desarrollo económico. Cuando se habla de desarrollo económico, de modernización, siempre se habla de industrialización y no se toma en cuenta que la otra cara de la industrialización obviamente son los campesinos. Entonces, lo que nos contó Joseph Love a través de la obra de Chayanov, a través de la obra de Chayanov, que como Kautsky se enfrentaba con la interpretación más clásica en aquel entonces en el pensamiento marxista, la interpretación de Lenin, según la cual el campesinado por así decirlo, se volvería capitalista. Lo que hay de interesante en la obra de Chayanov es una mirada muy atenta también al aspecto social y yo diría cultural de esta clase que supuestamente se tendría que mudar así como si fuera una commodity en asalariado industrial. ¿Qué pasa cuando el campesino no quiere dejar el campo porque prefiere su vida y tiene una resistencia hacia el pasaje, digamos, a algo que no es solo un empleo, sino un modelo de vida, que es el modelo de vida industrial? Y esto es lo que aclareció muy bien el profesor Love por el trámite no solamente de la obra del pensador ruso, sino de su recepción en dos lugares tan alejados, pero digamos con alguna semejanza, como Rumanía y Brasil, en dos épocas diversas también, ¿no? Una comparación que muy atrevida por un historiador, pero la verdad que me parece que dio muchos frutos en lo que se refiere a la comprensión de un fenómeno. Y después nos fuimos con Ricardo Wieślowski a ver lo que ha sido el aporte a nivel de comprensión analítica, entonces a nivel de instrumentos analíticos y a nivel de sugestiones políticas de la CEPAL, en lo que se refiere al mismo sujeto, que es el sujeto del desarrollo económico. Entonces, hoy, partiendo de estas premisas que fueron al mismo tiempo premisas históricas, teóricas y en lo que se refiere Eric también un poco, Eric nos brindó datos estadísticos, vamos a enfocarnos sobre la relación no siempre clara, pero una relación que nos convita mucho, que nos desafía entre integración y desarrollo económico. Y entonces la primera persona que va a hablar, al cual pido si la traducción funciona bien en este momento.
Ya,
Bene. Entonces la primera persona que va a hablar es el profesor Tibor Palánkai. Tibor es un colega y amigo que nos hizo el placer de venir por la primera vez acá de Hungría. Tibor estudió y hizo toda su carrera de estudio, de grado y de posgrado en una universidad cuyo mismo nombre demuestra el paso de la historia, porque cuando se graduó la universidad se llamaba Karl Marx, esa es la famosa Karl Marx University de Budapest. En aquel entonces había nomás con la facultad de economía en la Universidad Karl Marx, y después del me dice Martín de avisar que hay traducción disponible para quien la necesita, no tanto para escuchar mis pobres palabras, sino para escuchar la intervención del profesor, que va a ser en inglés. Entonces se pueden ahora, lo que la necesita se puede acercar. Se van a perder mi introducción, que no es muy importante, pero más importante van a entender Tibor. Y entonces la universidad en la cual se graduó Tibor era la Karl Marx, que después aumentó sus facultades, ahora es una de las facultades de las universidades más importantes de Hungría, y cuenta con muchas otras facultades, además de ciencias económicas, y es la Corvinus. La Corvinus University de Budapest. Tibor tiene una muy extensa trayectoria en lo que se refiere a la enseñanza, a la investigación, y desde muy temprano ha sido también miembro de la prestigiosa Academia de Ciencias húngara, y desde un año que ahora no veo, es vicepresidente de la sección de Ciencias Sociales de la misma academia. En lo que se refiere a sus reconocimientos a nivel europeo, quiero solamente hablar de todos los reconocimientos que tienen que ver con la acción Jamonet, porque es la misma acción que nos ayuda a organizar estos eventos. Tibor es profesor Jamonet ad personam, y también recibió en 2010 un premio especial de la misma acción. Tibor participó en cuanto economista, como asesor, en el trabajoso proceso de acercamiento de Hungría a la Unión Europea. Entonces, cuando el profesor Palánkai habla como economista, pero habla también como persona que tiene una experiencia directa de lo que ha sido, en términos de desarrollo económico, el acercamiento de su país a la Unión Europea. Tibor nos va a hablar de cambios en los patrones centro-periferia, la integración de Europa Central y Oriental en la Unión Europea. Tibor, tienes la palabra.
Well, thank you very much for these kind words, and thank you very much for inviting me for this very interesting conference. I found, even if I couldn't follow exactly the discussion, I found it very high level and very very interesting. Of course, I apologize for my English. I don't speak Spanish. To give an explanation still to my university, it was Karl Marx and now Corvinus. Corvinus Matthias was the biggest king of Hungary. In fact, it was the biggest country in history. It's a certain sort of superpower in Europe, and then, of course, everything changed on our detriment. So my topic is about Europe and the centrum-periphery problems. I refrain from talking about theoretical aspects of centrum-periphery. That would need another lecture, particularly if we extend to global economy. I concentrate only on Europe and the European Union, and the centrum and the periphery in the European Union. As an orientation, of course, I indicate what questions have to be discussed, like difference level development, structure, convergence, divergence, competitiveness, interdependence or unilateral dependence, on the periphery side, and pattern of.
Perdón. Si lo puede acercar. Perdón. Sí.
Los auriculares. Can you take the headphones?
Okay.
Que lo deje, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, leave it on the table, please, because apparently there's a problem with the. That's fine.
You want to turn off?
Probably this way. Sorry. So pattern of performance or winner or loser in international division of labor. Of course, these are in relative terms, taken in relative terms. For example, we, Eastern Central Europe, consider us as a periphery, but the European integration was a win-win case situation for us. We made a study, in fact, about association. In the 90s, we had an association agreement with the European Union before joining, and we concluded that the whole association was overwhelmingly beneficial for all member countries, the 15 all member countries. But it was beneficial for us as well. And the benefits for the 15 was relatively much less than the modest gains for us, in relative terms for our economy. So we have to take into account when we talk about this winner-loser position. And of course, what I want to discuss, that are the cultural, social, political aspects of centrum and periphery. That's a totally different question, of course, equally important. Well, as far as centrum and periphery in European Union is concerned, there are at least 3 groups of countries in the centrum. One are the so-called northwestern European Union countries and the Scandinavian countries, and this together I call as core of the European Union. And plus we have the southwestern European countries, France, Italy, Ireland and United Kingdom. This is not really, Ireland is not really a southwestern country in Europe, but the problems, the pattern is similar to the South in many respects. So they, with UK, they rather belong to this group of countries. Well, as far as the periphery is concerned, we have first the southern European countries, that's Spain, Portugal, Cyprus, Greece, and Malta. And we have the new members. And among the new members, again, we have to distinguish three groups of countries. One is Eastern Central Europe, one is the Baltic countries, one are the Baltic countries, and Eastern Balkan. And then we have Western Balkan, which are the candidates of the European Union, which are not yet members of the Union. Well, this is again a distinction along the pattern of their development, along the pattern of their peripheric position or peripheric characteristics, or historical pattern. You know, Eastern Central Europe, for example, is a Catholic Protestant Jewish tradition. Baltics have a Protestant Orthodox Jewish tradition. If we take Balkan is rather an Orthodox Islamic, again, Jewish traditions there. So even Bulgaria and Romania claims to be Central Europe. But if we take the pattern, if we take the cultural, the historical backgrounds, then they belong to Balkan, they belong to other countries. Croatia, on the other hand, is a Balkan country by geographical position, was part of the former Yugoslavia, but Croatia is Central Europe because it has the Catholic, type of strong Catholic type of cultural and religious, history. Well, one more short distinction. I speak about Eastern Central Europe. We should mention Western Central Europe as well, and that together is in an important part of the European Union, Central Europe. And if we extend that Austria, Italy, and Germany, even in some sense Switzerland belongs to this group. Of course, again, historically, only Bavaria or Baden-Württemberg was part of this region, or in Italy, if I am right, Lombardy and Veneto. That was the old Habsburg Empire. But for example, Germany again claims itself as a Central European, Mitteleuropa, a Central European country. When I analyze this question, I rely on a so-called integration profile method, which we developed with my colleagues and my PhD student in recent years. We largely published in this matter. And it's about measuring integration. In the last 10 years, there are several attempts to measure somehow integration. And in this respect, there are globalization indexes, I will make references, interconnectedness indexes and so on, which try to somehow quantify and characterize the integration process. And this is a certain alternative extension of this analysis. In fact, extension of analysis to qualitative, not just quantitative, but not quantitative, but qualitative aspects, like dependence, like balancedness of relations, and so on. So it's a more complex approach, and we try to give a picture about different countries' integrationness or different regions. We made, for example, my PhD student made integration profile of NAFTA, even some, if I remember years ago, somebody made the integration profile of Mercosur or ASEAN, and so you can use these parameters, which are real integration, institutional integration, performances, comparative performances, and convergence. I just mentioned as background, I won't speak too much about this problem. Really, in the concrete analysis, we analyze, or I analyze, the state of real integration, that is intensity of relations and interconnectedness and structural adjustment. Then institutional integration. Here I use 3 categories, in fact. Full members, I mean those 18 who are members of the Eurozone, and really all of the other acquis communautaire framework. Ireland is in this sense. Ireland is not member of the Schengen, but this is a very particular matter. And there are, on the other hand, who are opting out or abstain from that part of integration. Among them, Hungary, Czech Republic, UK, Sweden, who partly opt out from the monetary union or have no strategy. We have no deadline, for example, in Hungary when we want to join the Eurozone. We have no strategy for that. Really, the government is wavering this issue and seemingly tries to put into the future as far as possible. So this is another policy. And there are countries in between, like Lithuania, which will join the European Union next year, Denmark, which is de facto part of the Eurozone. Only they keep their national currency, but totally kept connected with the euro. So they are like in the Eurozone. Or Poland, which has a strong strategic interest to join. Again, probably in the next few years, Poland will join the Eurozone. Then I try to make some rankings in terms of, when I try to measure this relation to centrum and periphery, rankings according to global competitiveness interest, the per capita GDP, or the COF index. I don't know whether probably many of you are familiar with that. This is a globalization index. This is an index which tried to measure Swiss Institute of Konjunkturforschung, which tries to rank the different countries of the global economy, in fact almost all, in terms of globalization, intensity of relation. But they use, for example, a number of McDonald's restaurant per 1,000, population, or that type of parameters, which are of course controversial. But my method is no more controversial, at least I can tell you. And then Lisbon scorecard. So we can use this rankings in measuring then performance, trade balances, financial performance, and convergence. Well, as far as the trade intensity is concerned, we relate trade to GDP, and then you can rank the countries. If the GDP is below 10%, then there is no intensity. Then 10 to 30 low, then and if it is about 70, then you have extremely high intensity, extremely high dependence from foreign trade. Among other, Hungary is among that. On the other hand, Greece and Cyprus is below 10%. Really, for them, in terms of goods trade, are really marginal. The European Union is a marginal issue. Even maybe surprising that below 10% is goods trade. It's of course different if you trade and services. In trade and services, you get a different picture, because Greece is and Cyprus is rather service economies. Or you can make it, I again just indicate, the measurement of sub-regional interconnectedness, and here, just for curiosity, I show how far interconnected are the different regions. There is a high interconnectedness among the Western, the Centrum, and then it's high for Scandinavian countries, while East Central Europe is just on the average, and then you see that the Southern countries are much less interconnected with the European Union, and even I indicate the Latin countries. Well, another point is from point of view of centrum-periphery and interdependence is the strategic partnership. We define strategic partnership if a trade is more than 10% in my total trade. So if a country, and in fact Germany is 30% in our trade, Germany is a strategic partner for Hungary. What we see, it's a very interesting that if we take Central Europe together, for Germany, Hungary is something 5%. But if we take together Central Europe, then it is 16% for Germany. So the Central European region is a strategic region for Germany. And if we take France or Italy or UK and Germany, they have each 10%, more than 10% share, which means that it's a certain sort of interdependence. You can measure that they are interdependent. Germany is an overwhelming partner in that, but Germany is depending also on these economies. So there is a certain balance, and this is at least in terms of centrum of the European Union, that centrum is an example, that relatively more or less balanced interdependence. Well, here I just give you about these indexes, how we calculate, the different rankings, COF index and the different countries, and their ranking in the indexes is then scored. Then one important matter is the financial performance. In terms of financial performance, we use the debt levels, we use the debt service, yields on government, bonds, risk premiums, and credit rating. Last year and for Standard and Poor, and you can see again that there is a striking difference between the centrum. They perform much better. For example, the credit rating of the centrum is A, and most of them AAA according to the credit rating. And for example, Hungary has quite a poor performance in this SS still certain periphery. Well, convergence. I think that I needn't talk about the theoretical question of convergence. We had a big development, a tremendous development in the last century in Europe. Partly there was a large increase in real incomes, and what I think we have to mention that there was a halving of labor, of so-called working life. People worked, 140,000 hours end of 19th century, and now they work only 70,000 hours. It's a huge change, it's a huge improvement in level of development, in huge improvement in terms of living condition, free time, and so on. Well, again, what we see that this tremendous development is strikingly unequally distributed. And this is particularly striking in case of global integration, global economy. Many of you spoke about this yesterday. And as the globalization accelerated in the last decade, this this proportion has dramatically increased. But I must make a remark on that, because this is basically about incomes. And the UN statistics compare incomes, compare per capita incomes. If you take the real consumption, then probably you get quite a different question, quite a different picture. I mean, you know, the beef goulash is a national food in Hungary. And if you go to Hilton restaurant in Budapest, you know, you pay minimum $50 for this beef goulash. Of course, you have silver spoons and white gloves, waiters, and so on. So it's. But if you go down to the corner to a grandma pretty restaurant, then you have it $5, and it's better than in the Hilton. And you know, so there are great variety of choice, and the globalization gives a great variety. You can have $5 or $10 shirt, and really sometimes I don't know why it's $500 a shirt. Probably it's that's my limitation, that I can't that $500 shirt. Or you can have a car with full extras, and you can have a junk car, same utility. It takes you from the space in another one. The only difference is probably major difference is the air conditioning, because you can't go faster in a traffic jam with a luxury car either. So you have this you have to take into account this real consumption side of inequities. In fact, I read an American study which told that in real terms, really there is an equalization rather. No data are in terms of global economy, but I'm sure that the picture would be quite different. Well, European integration is somewhat different. I will mention later that we have the convergence is supported by solidarity and cohesion funds and so on. So it's really, I dare say that the conversion is a certain sort of success story of the European integration. If we, with all of these contradictions, if we look back the last 50 years. Well, I bring this per capita income, you know, data. I call you just on the 60% of Hungary in 1960. And then what happened in 30 years? It fell down to 40%, which meant that the Soviet central planning system had a disastrous impact on Eastern countries. That I have data on Hungary, but it was the same with the other Soviet countries. And we lost 3 decades. The propaganda, of course, was that the Soviet system is superior to the capitalism and so on, but it was the fact proved the opposite. And we started really the convergence only from the middle 90s, and we had quite a good performance, not particularly Hungary, but some other countries. Well, here I think I jump over, and first of all, a certain summary of progress of European integration. Really, there are 2 points which we should stress. One is the unique level of integration in Europe, unique model. There is no other model in terms of single market and Europe and single currency. No other integration grouping, even if the Gulf countries aim at monetary union sometimes in the future. There is a supranational character of institutions. gaining gradually a certain of political institutional identity, a polity. It is again a remarkable development of European integration, and applying, and again unique, applying the principle of solidarity and cohesion, supported by structural funds. Again, you shouldn't overestimate this, but if you take Hungary, then you can sense the last 6 years in terms of infrastructure investment, metro in the Budapest and highways and so on, which were built by structural funds from the European Union. And of course, the other thing is a very high level of integratedness and interconnectedness and interdependence. Again, this is a unique character of the European integration. Well, what is one of mine probably important thesis is, or our thesis, that in the last decades, the EU peripheries were internalized into the center. This is historically a new situation, and it is based on intensity of relations, high integratedness, acquisition of full membership, and growing convergence. So this is, again, with all of the reservation, all of the problems, all of the contradictions, all of the crisis problem, that should be, acknowledged as a important historical development. Of course, the periphery survives. The peripheral pattern survives. There are still differences in level of development. Level of Austria is almost double of Hungary, even if Hungary is 67% of the European average. We have a certain sort of lagging behind in competitiveness, in transnationalization of local companies. Really, we have a trend that the national companies growingly transnationalized over the world, including the small and medium-sized companies in Europe. While we have a dominance of foreign transnational companies, and the domestic sector is weak, less competitive, and still inward-looking. So this is a huge qualitative somehow shortcomings of this integration. That still this part of the economy is really not really integrated. This means a dualistic structure of economies, the dualistic structure which is characteristic for periphery, foreign-owned sector and domestic-owned sector. Well, we have quite a high high-tech content of our export, among the highest in European Union. There is one problem. This high-tech content is mostly imported. It's not created in the country. So we import high-tech components, high-tech knowledge, and then we assemble the Audi in Dürr. The Audi in Dürr, which is in fact the most modern than Ingolstadt. Ingolstadt is the center of Audi. So the Germans brought the up-to-date technology into the country. The productivity is as high as in Ingolstadt. There is one difference, that the wages are 1/5 of Ingolstadt. And that makes competitive. But this is a highly competitive product, a highly sophisticated product, but this is somehow mostly important. And then we have the problem with slow financial integration and performance, and this means that we were hit by the financial and the sovereign debt crisis, I say a few words about this. Well, I try finally to, before concluding, I try to make a certain ranking of peripheries. And here I put the countries in 5 categories, 5 scale, the centrum, and there the scoring is 1 to 2. Then the near or inner periphery, 2 to 3. The medium intermediary periphery is 3 to 4, and the others. And you can see here that the core is really scoring 1,20. Southwestern Europe, I mean Italy, France, and UK. You can see that they are worst in the GSE's Global Competitive Index. COF is the Globalization Index. Per capita GDP, LSC